Howdy, howdy! We are live on a Friday night with yet another brand new episode of Star Trek Discovery to talk about. We're starting to run out of them, Dave. We're at the sixth of the final 10 that we're gonna get for Disco. So
I guess we better go look beyond the edge of the galaxy after beyond the barrier.
yeah, it's
Now that
it's
they can get through it. Oh, I don't know. Can they get through it now?
yeah, they got through it in season 4.
Can they do it on the
You had
regular?
you had to go inside of the bubble and then float out in the thing.
It didn't look easy.
No, it's a pain in the ass, but the spore drive can get you a lot of places really quick.
That's true. That's true.
Intergalactic travel, outer galactic still. I don't know. Maybe that's what the pathway drive will do. But I see people are chatting in the audience, so let's go ahead and get the show started.
For sure.
I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 285th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new. And tonight, we are talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 5, Episode 6, Whistlespeak, written by Kenneth Lynn and Brandon Schultz, and directed by Chris Byrne. I do want to point out that Chris Byrne has been a Star Trek Discovery director going all the way back since Season 1. They've also worked on Strange New Worlds, and I think Short Treks or Picard or some other stuff within the franchise. But this is the final Chris Byrne directed episode of Star Trek Discovery. So pour one out for Chris Byrne.
Yeah, we don't talk about the directors a ton, and frankly, it's a level of inside baseball that's usually kind of lost on me on viewing, but yeah, right on. That's going the distance, you know?
I'm trying to point out the writer and director veterans that have been on the show since 2017.
Yeah, respect.
But I'm looking forward to talking about Chris Byrne's final episode of Disco with you, Dave, in just a moment. Before we do that, we do need to say thank you to the wonderful Tex-Trek Patreon supporters that we have big plans for this month, the month of May. Thank you so much, Starfleet Sohel, Cake is Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Daw, Geek Filter, Quark Spar, Stephanie Durantes, Matthew Averett, Braxton, Chuck A., Joel Vallis, Benginium, and our anonymous supporters. We're going to have, they're typically monthly, our Patreon watch parties, but for May, it's going to be a weekly event. We're going to have Patreon watch parties on Saturdays, May 4th, May 11th, May 18th, and May 25th, every Saturday in May, 3:30 p.m. Central. This coming Saturday, if you're watching us live on Friday night, it'll be tomorrow, May 4th. May the 4th be with us and not the other Star franchise, because we're going to be watching Deep Space Nine's The Die Is Cast and also In the Pale Moonlight. So two of the biggest Garrick episodes ever. If you're a Garrick fan, then you'll probably want to be there. But that'll be open to anyone in the Tex-Trek Patreon, and you can join our Patreon as little as $2 a month. If you can afford to be more generous, there's some additional perks as well. But I'm looking forward to these weekly watch parties, starting with some DS9. So we're starting with some really good stuff. But
I mean, yeah, DS9, one of its best characters. What's not to like?
But Saturday, May 11th, we're watching Star Trek Generations. So if you're a fan of that movie, you get not just one captain with Picard, but also with Kirk. So
I think Fatheree. I think I'm a little bit more of a fan than maybe most on that one. I think it's slightly
following though.
Yeah, I'm part of that following. I like that Soren.
we'll have some other stuff. We're celebrating the birthdays of our Bridge Crew Patreon members. So if you want to get the selection of what we watch and have a Patreon watch party in celebration of your birthday, then you can sign up at that Bridge Crew level, and that'll be even more celebrations we're doing with our supporters. But it is definitely appreciated, everyone who does chip in on a monthly level. So thank you so much for doing that. There's not like a ton of news going on this week, Dave. I know that there's a lot of back and forth on who is trying to buy Paramount. You know, it could be Skydance, it could be Apollo, it could be now Sony. Sony has entered the race. You know, a lot of races. Yeah. You know, we have
going on.
Maul and Locke racing against the Disco Crew. We have Tilly running a race to go be a sacrificial lamb, and we have a race to buy Paramount.
And we'll have to see which one of them chokes first and drinks the water.
But yeah, I don't have any thoughts on any of the recent developments with just we're watching. We'll see what happens. There is some fun stuff happening on May 25th that I want to let everyone know about. We've been promoting this on social media this week, but our friend Aaron Harvey put this together and has been putting a lot of work into it. But he's organized a day-long celebration of Star Trek Lower Decks on May 25th. The idea is to watch as much Lower Decks as possible on Paramount Plus and also post about it, get it trending on the social media platforms. We want to show the powers that be that there is a lot of interest in Star Trek Lower Decks. We want to see the show get some kind of follow-up. You know, with the last season of Discovery that we're watching now, they allowed the creators of that show, or the current team, I should say, to create their finale little end cap to put on the end of it, and they thought they made like a good, you know, final season to close out the show. And you know, it'd be nice if we got something similar for Lower Decks. I think of any possible, you know, what would you call it, like reunion, sequel, I guess, like a sequel of any of like the current Star Trek shows. I think the one most likely to get a sequel, a follow-up, you know, like a big reunion, would be Lower Decks, because you don't have to, you know, rebuild any sets or anything. You just got, as long as those titmouse animators have the files saved and you have the voice actors' phone numbers, and you can get a hold of them to record some more dialogue, and you get the animators to animate some stuff. I think we could get like Alex Kurtzman says he wants to do these made for streaming movies. We might get like a Lower Decks movie on Paramount Plus in a year or two, something like that. Or you know, who knows? It might even, you know, end up on a different streaming platform with a new season ordered. That happens on occasion. You know, something similar with Prodigy. But I think that Alex Kurtzman and Mike McMahon, in their announcement of it being the final season of Lower Decks, they both said, you know, we would like to see more, you know, with these characters. So, you know, this is a way for us to be like, oh yeah, you know, we hear you, Alex and Mike, we want more also.
And Trek's been saved before. So.
Yes. Yeah. We should also point out that Aaron wanted to dedicate this to the memory of John Trimble, who him and his wife Bijo wrote the book on saving Trek back in the 60s.
Yeah, for sure.
So that'll be May 25th. I'm looking forward to that. But Dave, shall we go ahead and talk about Whistlespeak?
Let's do it.
All right. I'm going to quickly recap the episode by reading the official synopsis, and then I'll expand on that with some spoilers. But the official synopsis reads, while undercover in a pre-warp society, Captain Burnham is forced to consider breaking the Prime Directive when a local tradition threatens Tilly's life. Meanwhile, Culber tries to connect with Stamets, and Adira steps up with when Rayner assigns them a position on the bridge. So yeah, that pretty much covers the episode. They do find a clue at the end after Burnham saves Tilly by you know, revealing herself to the local population, and just you know, without much hesitation, just fully breaking the Prime Directive to save a crew member. But it seems to work out, and they do get a clue, and the episode ends with okay, we know the final clue, the The fifth of the 5 puzzle pieces is on Betazoid or Beta Z.
Or no,
Betazoids.
that's right. The
people.
clue is there. It's not necessarily the thing is there, I guess.
But the final clue is there, and also they have a location on Maw and Lock. So hopefully more Maw and Lock next week. But Dave, I think it's your turn to give the first opening statement. Do you want to let us know your broad feelings on this episode before we get into the specifics?
Sure. I actually have a real quick question first, though. I was just thinking about this. Is this the first big Prime Directive break from for Discovery's crew, or have they done it before? Everybody's got to do it.
I guess this is probably the biggest. But,
Yeah.
I mean, you had that dilemma in Church Planet, Way to Eden. But when Pike kind of was the Prime Directive breaker.
Yeah.
But that was more Pike's thing. This was I was actually discussing this with a friend of ours, Miss Amy Nelson, a couple days ago, and she pointed out to me that every captain has to have like that moment where they have to be like, no, I'm not a god, on an away mission. So this was Burnham's.
Yeah. It's a Trek classic. But to get to my impressions, for me it was not a Trek classic. I guess overall, I was thinking about how this is just my brain's collating of it, but visiting quasi-medieval planets has made for 2 of my least favorite recent Trek episodes. On Strange New Worlds, they had the memory loss episode in
Among the Lotus Eaters.
Among the Lotus Eaters, yep. And then this one joins that with Whistlespeak. And I think I like Lotus Eaters better of the 2. I actually think there's some neat ideas going on here. I think that they were kind of maybe at their strongest in the episode when they kind of juxtaposed a little bit of the idea of evolving spiritual beliefs and how that compared to the Federation maybe evolving how they do the Prime Directive. But I felt like it was very surface arguments and stuff, and I wanted a more rigorous discussion of it. It felt a little bit more like in the end they kind of did the, hey, maybe God created science, which is a pretty surface observation. But I was kind of on board early on because I liked seeing Burnham and Tilly together, like an early sort of little duo in the show. And I do like seeing them, they're doing their thing. I just felt like I wasn't really engaged with this episode. I wasn't finding the scene super interesting. The how do you say it? Is it Hellemnites? Is that from the name of the people?
Hallamnites or
Hallamnite.
I don't know. I didn't question it till now, but the planet. Wait, the planet is Hellemnites. Yeah, Hellemnites.
Right. The people. They were kind of boring to me. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I thought they looked kind of boring. They were kind of generically medieval with their locations, like what was it, like the high place and the healing grove,
the high summit. Yeah,
the high summit. Yeah, that was it. But along the way, I liked things that were going on in it. I liked little things like them having a progressive stance on gender. It seemed like them. In a number of ways, they seemed sort of like they were pushing forward and progressive. But I like I kind of like the subplot where Culber, part of it at least, where Book is the more receptive ear than his husband. I thought that was interesting. I thought the 2 lead Hellemnites.
Yeah, you got it right. Hellemnite, yeah.
I said it both ways. I think it's Ovaz and Rava. I thought that they gave good performances. And I think my favorite thing was just a subplot. I liked Rayner using his kind of stern dad voice for good. I liked him being there for Adira a lot, actually. But kind of in the end, it felt like a misstep, like a boring episode to me. And I was like, oh, well, at least it's kind of a harmless, boring episode. They didn't screw up the season. There wasn't any big, huge character missteps or anything. It just felt like it's going to be one of those episodes that would be, for me, usually easy to skip. So that's where I landed on it.
For me, it sounds like I liked it more than you, but it was a mixed bag for me in a lot of ways. I thought that the A plot, with Burnham and Tilly on the away mission was it was a little dry. No pun intended. But it started off really interesting, and I actually liked some of the stuff in the conclusion. But in the middle, I thought I don't know, like running the foot race through the park was not particularly engaging.
Yeah.
But I loved the use of Kovich in this episode. I really liked him being a part of the story again. I was expecting to see more Kovich in season 5, so I was kind of surprised that we didn't see much of him in the last few episodes. I'm hoping he'll have a stronger role in the second half. I love that we got so much screen time of Tilly and Burnham together. That's something that just the recent seasons of Disco haven't done as much as the early seasons, and they really do have a really fun friendship. It's something that we've talked about the whole time we've been covering the show, but that was something that started working really early on in the lifespan of Disco was the Tilly Burnham friendship, when they started off as roommates. And I liked this is probably the last time we'll get an episode of this of the two of them having this much screen time together. I doubt it's going to happen again in the remaining 4 episodes, so I'm thankful for that. And I kind of didn't even notice it until I watched the episode a second time, just because I'm so used to them having great chemistry together. But it really is fun to watch them work together and be friends together, but also be like Starfleet crewmates together. And like you, Dave, I really liked the use of Rayner with Adira. I have actually a little bit of criticisms of some of the things they've done with Adira that I'll talk about when we get to it. But It was cool to see Rayner both being Rayner, but also being functional in the Disco crew structure. We talked about it kind of last year. Last episode was his trial by fire of, can he be first officer of this ship? And I think that he proved both to the audience and to himself that he could. And now he's more confident being the Disco XO. I just hope that they don't make him too soft. I hope that he still maintains a lot of his Raynerness going forward.
Well, I think that's what they were doing here. I think they were showing how he can take what he does, his style of command, and adapt it, which I think is a really cool idea. That's potent, and if they continue with that, I think that's good. What was it? He said something like, he's just like, no time like the present, or or something like that. Very dad-like.
Yeah.
But in an encouraging way.
The last thing I got is I really miss Mullen Locke.
They made quite the impression last episode.
Yeah, and now I'm worried that I don't think he's actually gonna bleed to death, but I'm desperate to see what happens next. So I hopefully we get that in the next episode. I think we will. I'm pretty sure that we'll have a lot of them in the next episode. But let's go ahead and get into our episode breakdown. So starting off at the beginning of the episode, they spend 2 days trying to scan the vial of water they found in the previous clue, and nothing. So it's Burnham is suggesting that they look up dried planets, or that might be rain might be something that they really value, or I don't know, places where like distilled water would have significance. But it was Rayner, not Rayner. Kovich is the one who actually gets them unstuck in their dilemma when he has the list of names of the scientists who discovered the progenitor tech, when they're able to narrow it down to either the denobulin or the Betazoid.
And only the denobulin had links to the water tower kind of creation stuff, or the rain towers. I thought this was cool. I liked seeing them stuck. I think it's kind of important to see in this kind of plot structure that you don't have a eureka moment every you don't just like talk for 5 minutes and you're like, aha, that's what the Riddler's clue means. So I liked seeing him stuck, and then I liked Kovic maybe arguably a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina, but I don't think this was like
Yeah.
it was providing a clue, not saving them, nothing that giant. So I feel like, and it felt like it was within the kind of resources he would have. So,
It,
um,
it
but
almost
yeah,
makes me rescind my criticism of not getting enough Kovic, because if he does come in with kind of, a game-changing save, like, here, let me help you out with this convenient list of names, the fact that, like, he was absent for so long and is only just now giving a contribution like that in episode 6, it kind of justifies it a little bit more. Structurally, it is a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, but at least they held off until
yeah.
we're closing in on actually getting the final piece. This is the second to last one.
And he didn't actually give them the answer. He said,
Right.
"We can use this to narrow it down, and maybe and then they do the let's backtrack. Let's see if we can figure out what links either of these two people to that, and then we can go from there." And yeah, I thought that was a neat little bit of little early detective work.
It's funny to me that this idea of like the solid white room, which has been really popular ever since The Matrix came out in 1999. But Star Trek is only just now getting around to using it. It's been in like a bunch of TV shows and movies and stuff for decades at this point. But I like the Infinity Room. I like Kovic, but are they revealing like too much about him? Are they maintaining the mystique, or is it kind of frustrating that we don't know more about him? It's like this guy with a weird desk, and he likes to wear glasses and have 21st century legal pads to write down lists of names on.
Fatheree, is his desk a delta turned sideways?
I love the look of his desk. It's a very interesting piece of furniture, but it has like, it's a very like futuristic shape, but it's like wood paneling. It's very like TOS in that way. It's both like futuristic, but also kind of a retro futurism.
Well, everything about like how he dresses, wearing kind of old fashioned glasses, the old style suit, his preference for paper. They could either be affectations or they could suggest time travel-y elements. Maybe he's the embodiment of the Guardian of Forever. I don't really think that. But
we met that dude, and his name was Carl.
Yeah, there could be other ones. I don't know. I don't know if there's only one Guardian. Did they ever say for sure?
Well, he calls himself the Guardian of Forever.
Oh, okay. That's fair. Anyway, whatever's going on, I don't know. I'm not the biggest Kovic fan, but I like him. And so I'm ready to roll with whatever they decide to do. If they give us a little bit more or they reveal his secrets, that's cool. I'm into it. If they don't, I'm not going to be a problem for me.
That's kind of where I am. I like him as a mystery, but if they have something cool there that they want to, show some, I kind of don't think he necessarily has to be, a man out of time or a time travel type dude.
Sure.
I think he might just be like the ultimate hipster and he just likes old fashioned things. But who knows? My favorite Kovic moment is like in season 3 when he's like really scared when Osira is attacking the Federation HQ, and he seems like so like distraught, and he's like more worried than Vance almost, it seems. I just like. I just, it was like the one time where you see him, I don't know, kind of like this like romantic side to Kovic where he's like, he's all concerned about like, this is like the last hope for like, like the good and the just and the righteous to have, any hope of like safety or security or decency in the future. And he just seems like so like distraught. And it's like, I like that we only see it like that one moment of that. It kind of adds to the mystery. It's like, oh, maybe like he is like this like really like pure-hearted guy underneath, but I just like I don't know. I like not knowing. I guess I like questioning him. I think he's more interesting to me when I'm questioning what's going on with him.
We talked about this previously, but conceptually, the idea of a kind of a person is part of this hierarchy, but is mysterious, doesn't seem to necessarily have oversight that we know of, and nobody quite knows how he fits in, just that he has answers. That doesn't sound like the trusting future, the very transparent future that you would want. And so, while yes, I like a mystery,
Mm.
it feels a little. It feels like it's more. He speaks more to the era of the Byrne than the post-Byrne solution. So I think he should come out of the shadows. Now, the more I think about it, the more I want him revealed. And I do, Father. I agree with you. I like that he's reveals that this seemingly shady, or not shady, but shadowy at least side of him, that beneath it is kind of a big heart and a lot of caring.
Yeah, but you made a good case. Yeah, I do want to see him pulled out of the shadows for those same reasons. So maybe someday, not in Disco, but in some future show. But yeah, let's talk about, I guess, the arrival at Helimno, and Adira is on the bridge. I guess Linus has his day off, so
Sure.
Rayner is like, "Okay, Adira, you want some bridge time? Get to work." Adira gives a little presentation on how the rain tower, water tower thing. It's like this big rock column looking thing, but on the inside it has a bunch of denobulan technology that will make it rain.
Yeah, it's their first mystery is why did he build this rain tower to look like a mountain?
Yeah.
Um, solid mystery premise. You know what I really liked is shortly after this, when Burnham is like talking to Tilly during the mission prep, and she's just like giddy, with like xenoanthropology energy.
When her face really like sparks up with joy and like the scientific curiosity, and she's talking about having flashbacks to Dr. Taprazi's xenoanthropology class back on Vulcan. Yeah, it was fun to see that. And we were talking about being like a little bored of the Helmnites once we get down on the planet and meet them. But they sounded so fascinating initially, when Burnham's talking about like, like they don't have any type of societal class structure. They view everyone as equal members of society, and they recognize 3 gender identities, and they have this cool Whistlespeak language for communicating over long distances. All of that was like really fascinating. Which is odd because normally, you want to show, not tell, and that was like all telling. But Sonequa Martin Green and Mary Wiseman made it work.
Yeah, arguably they made it work so well that I was like kind of a little disappointed with everything else, because I was like, oh, so they're just humans walking around in brown clothes.
Well, we did get the retinal tricorders, and they also mentioned that there's subcutaneous comms that beam. They have communicators implanted in them when they're beamed down. So remember how last week they had the the Remendium or whatever from like the transponders that Spock used to escape in Patterns of Force. I talked about that in the Gorn Eggs last week.
Yeah.
The Nazi planet episode of the original series. But they had like those transponders implanted on Kirk and Spock because they were doing an undercover away mission like this. So it's like one of those things I talk about, Dave, how sometimes these Star Trek writers, they watch like some episode of Legacy Star Trek and to pull something from it, and then like the next episode they pull something that's like, oh, you can tell that they watched Patterns of Force because the next episode they pull something else from Patterns of Force. So I think it's funny when that happens, but. I mean, why wouldn't it? It makes total sense that would happen.
It does seem like a good idea to start really working on that technology that won't be found by the native population, and so you don't get a piece of the action again.
Yeah. But when they first beam down and they hear the whistling in the distance, and they meet the dusty old lady who's explaining about like, oh, I was at the edge of the storm clearing the dust, and
I actually wasn't. I was trying to figure out what that meant. Is she out there like with a push broom?
That's, I guess, like if you live on like the outer perimeters of like the one little green area near the high summit, the one place where it rains. Like, do they have people like pushing, like sweeping the dust back out of the forest on the perimeters? Like they said, it's like a necessary job. I don't know what's going on there to clear the dust, but
I feel like if they were to show it, it would be something like more cool, like some kind of Dune catch pockets or something like that. And you have to put them up almost like when you're hanging laundry outside, and it catches the dust, and then you empty those out. And like but they don't show it, and so it, it leads to me thinking that she was out there with a broom pushing this dust, and that was a little silly, unfortunately.
I see in the comments, Cake is Eternal says, "Love Dusty Lady," and I think her name is Honora.
Okay.
But I do want to point out that I do think all the guest stars in this episode, I think we got some good performances. I think her and both the father and the kid are both good actors.
Yeah,
of Austin
I
and
agree.
Bravo. But this is also, I guess, where we meet all of them when everyone has to teamwork the sound cure.
Yeah, that was a very cool looking sequence, I have to say. I'm not sure if it felt a little convenient, as kind of like, and we've talked about Star Trek does that sometimes, to be like, they don't need your technology. Here's a very quick demonstration that their digital tech can do kind of the same thing. I was like, oh, that's handy that they're so good at it. But very visually striking and stuff, though. They like busted out like the Get Out teacups and stuff, and they did them all in unison. And instead of causing pain, it caused help. So good job there.
But that's kind of the last sound wave cool thing that they do. Like we go to like the planet, like the whistle speakers, and we get like, oh, this cool introduction to like their language, and we hear them before we see them, and then we see them and we immediately see like, oh, look, they can like use their harmonics. They can use like these sonic techniques to do all these cool things, and then it like stops being about sound after that.
Yeah, that's true. It still closes with sound with the tune that the mother hummed.
That's what I thought was weird. It's like, why did you make it humming a song instead of something about like whistling or something that like you had like this whole like sonic kind of theme about like your society at the beginning of the episode, and then you kind of forget about it.
Well, so here's to give them a little credit. I was thinking about this, and I don't know if I kind of reached a conclusion, but Burnham said early on that it's for communicating. That they had a phonetic language, but they communicated with Whistlespeak over long distances. And so, if you take that sort of metaphorically, it's about bridging gaps between like large, like distant ideas. And so, the mother's song bridged the gap between this guy's kind of old way of thinking and maybe pushing forward into something new, or reconnected him with his daughter. And I was like, it still is serving the function of Whistlespeak, of like bridging distances. We know that literally at the very least they were on the other side of a wall, and Burnham's communicator was able to pick it up. So I think that sort of could be considered Whistlespeak.
Yeah, I guess I think I would have modified it to have a climax that matched up with the theme and I think there's like a little bit better way you could have done that, but
I agree. There was a number of times where I don't know, I just kind of felt a little bit like it felt unfocused to me, maybe. Like I didn't feel like the motivations were always entirely clear for people. They did want to keep some of the motivations. The child of the priest figure, I did think it was cool, by the way, that they didn't denote social status. I forget. They must have called him something, but was it just his name?
Everyone's a compeer. Yeah, they're all equals.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. But that said, he's a little more compeer than others because they did listen to him, and he did, when he said, oh, the gods are angry, or,
Yeah, he does seem to have some status, I guess, even though the script says that no one does. I can kind of give him a pass on that, just because, like, someone has to explain the Bible story before the foot race, like...
It also feels accurate to, like, people are imperfect. It's like you may remove social status from your vocabulary, but it's still going to be hard for it to not emerge in some way. Yeah. But, what was I going to say? I lost track of what I was going to say. Something about Priesty Man.
Well, while you're trying to think of that,
yeah.
I think the episode does play out a little differently on a rewatch. If you don't figure out the sacrifice thing with the race, which I didn't piece that together the first time I was watching it. So it was kind of a weird experience, I guess. When I watch it the second time, it kind of makes more sense. And it's like, oh, okay, now I see why people are nervous whenever they're talking about this, or why like the old lady is trying to save Burnham's life by trying to talk her out of the race. It kind of seems like.
Right. Yeah, for sure that didn't come through immediately. Um, and that's okay.
I think
Like
they
it was
wanted it to come through though. I think like like
correct.
the music is kind of ominous and stuff. I think I was just a little slow. I didn't pick it up the first time, or I don't know. Maybe they should have been more clear with it, but
You know what they should have had one of those TOS type musical cues where the older lady was like she's like, you don't have to do this, like very intensely in the music, like dun 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 dun. Dun. And Kirk would look like, what's that all about?
yeah.
But yes, they didn't want you to know early on, for sure. They wanted it to be a bit of a reveal.
Well, Burnham. Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Did you figure out what the thing you forgot a second ago?
I think part of it was I was just talking about, like, I don't think anybody really had, there was no antagonist to this episode. There were people
Right.
who hadn't figured out how best to do things, that were struggling. I'm trying to think of the Rava, I think that's it. The priest's kid.
Yeah,
It was interesting
Rava.
that there was they wanted to, in the end was revealed, prove themselves to their dad.
Right.
And it seems like, clearly the mother had been lost at some point. And it was that was interesting. There was lots of veiled meanings, and it did sort of, we saw Tilly trying to pick up on what Rava reflected her students and their kind of drive to prove themselves or find a path.
Oh yeah.
And
We get to hear about Cadet Ross from the first episode of the season, who served them the Federation cocktail anniversary drink.
Yeah, that seemed like an oddly specific reference, but
Well, now we can update her memory alpha page to say Cadet Ross. We have a name for that face now.
yeah. But like you, Fatheree, the episode just seemed a little disjointed to me. There was lots of things kind of we didn't know. That's typical of a mystery, but I was like, it's more kind of interesting, I think, sometimes when you know motivations and they're clashing. And, here everything seemed a little bit vague. And so I just wasn't finding that the drama was turned up to the level that I like it to be on Star Trek.
The race of or the journey of the Mother Compeer, as they call it, but where everyone who participates, I guess, has to eat this little cube. I guess it's like really spicy or dries your mouth, or I don't know, whatever. It makes you thirsty.
It's like the anti-cough drop.
Yeah, it's like this thing is gonna make you cough. This is a mirror universe cough drop.
I like that. Yes. By the way, you may hear a cat. You may hear a cat meowing in the background.
That is a mirror universe cat in the agony booth, is what it sounds like.
The cat is sad because my brother and his wife have gone to get dinner.
Oh, that makes me sad too.
Trust me, this cat gets lots of attention and will be just fine. Yeah, no, I actually kind of liked that weird tradition. I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, it's sort of messed up. I feel like I get how rituals sometimes will involve a little physical discomfort, maybe kneeling at a pew for 2 hours or whatever and destroying your knees.
Or fasting is very common.
Fasting.
And a lot of religions do that, but
yeah, Lent and lots of other traditions of giving things up. But I kind of I appreciated that they had something that was kind of harsh. It's funny because they said that, I guess, Burnham's enthusiasm for doing the race kind of got everybody else, I think, jonesed for it. And they're like, yeah, let's do this. And then like 10 minutes later, they're gagging and choking.
Yeah. And I guess all these people, they'd be willing to sacrifice themselves to their gods, except for Tilly and Burnham are the only two who don't know that they're running a race to be the ones to die. But
you know what's interesting, Fatheree, as just almost a visual call out. One of the earliest kind of scenes that I sort of I think Burnham and Tilly bonding was them jogging through the halls of disco, wearing probably
Yeah.
their disco shirts,
Yeah, way
and
back in
bonding.
season 1. And that was when Burnham was trying to coach Tilly into you want to be a captain someday.
Command
You want to be
track.
on the command track, and you probably want to be on a Constitution class like the Enterprise. And that was the first mention of the Enterprise in Discovery.
Oh yeah, yeah. But yeah,
Foreshadowing the arrival of Pike.
but it does. It is another one of those coincidences, or not, that make this feel like, oh, this feels like an episode that sort of. I don't want to get all George Lucas and say it rhymes, but it does echo it. Okay.
Yeah, it echoes. A lot of season 5 echoes season 1. I say it's reflection. I say it's like mirror universe, like reflection.
Yeah. There we go.
But Mary Wiseman, Sonequa Martin Green, really good chemistry. Love seeing them together on screen, and I like seeing Burnham and Tilly get to do friend things like I don't know, like run a marathon. They kind of like have that fun banter when they're like, oh look,
Yeah.
it's the yellow moss. There must be a radiation leak over here, and they kind of like decide who's gonna split up and who's gonna keep running the race. And I like seeing like all of that teamwork stuff play out.
Yeah. I also like Mary Wiseman kind of joshing with the youngster Rava, and
Yeah.
busting their chops.
Calling them a little shit, and then kind of like teasing, the playful banter in competition.
Yeah, Mary Wiseman was doing her version of Rayner's tough love. Like, oh, I thought you were going to give me some competition. That's a Rayner kind of move.
Well, speaking of Rayner, when Michael repairs the panel, rebuilds the motherboard, Adira is on tech support for that, and this was all arranged by Rayner, who is trying to help Adira recover from the guilt of the time bug. Adira's blaming themselves for bringing the time bug onto the ship, almost getting everyone killed. So Rayner is like, okay, here's an opportunity for you to regain some confidence, I guess.
It's funny because just last episode? Yeah, he himself was arguably struggling with confidence in his new role. But I think that shows that he's, making strides forward, but he's recognizing, oh, I've got to be confident, and I can give these people confidence. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say like what my criticism of it was, but I'll let you finish your thought.
Well, I in the comments earlier, Jill was saying it felt like Adira's kind of arc was kind of bending backwards, and there is something to that. I think that it feels like they're kind of like the lack of confidence was something that was kind of an earlier character thing,
Right.
and that had been pushed past. But I will say this: people can relapse, and it wasn't like I think a massive thing. It was like, oh well, that time bug was pretty intense. That could have been a huge problem. It was a huge problem, I guess, and they felt responsible for it. So I don't feel like Adira is getting a great story arc this season, and I don't think they're necessarily intending to. Things happened, but it wasn't a big arc. But it did at least feel somewhat natural. I could certainly imagine, recent breakup, kind of traumatic accident that you felt like got past you. Yeah, I might feel I might be at a lower ebb at that point.
The criticism I've seen a lot lately is that we typically hear like Trill say like, oh yeah, when I get a symbiont in me and I get like all those like past life memories, I get like all this knowledge and like this confidence. They talk about like having like this confidence, and we don't see that with Adira. It more mirrors what Ezri Dax went through in Deep Space Nine, being unprepared. And I just wish that they would mention that a bit more, like mention having like these past Trill memories. Because people tend to forget that Adira is the one who still has all of the past Tau host memories, and the actual slug itself. Even though Adira is human, that's all in Adira. All that Gray has is just Gray's memories in a new
Fatheree.
Trill body.
As an example, I had kind of forgotten that to be the case. I guess basically they could still be coming up with all the ideas and things they had, but I don't know, would it improve things if they said, well, as the architect I once was pointed out, would know. And maybe it would. Maybe they do need to kind of be calling on that.
Or even if it's not even like it could even be like a hindrance. Maybe it could be like, oh, I'm trying to do this, but in one of my past lives, I would always get like really nervous around this thing. So sorry, I'm really struggling. I mean, like it doesn't necessarily have to be like an advantage to give the character. You can work it into the story as a disadvantage, or
right,
anything.
Yeah,
I just wanted to mention it.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that's a reasonable criticism. If you're gonna have a symbiont, that is such a makes the bearers of them, the hosts, so different to the average person. But don't forget about it.
And this is also a bit nitpicky, but I didn't think it was like terribly exciting. Burnham just has to call tech support and figure out like what buttons to press. Like, just compare that moment to, say, season 5, episode 2, remember when Saru and Burnham were trying to get the information from the statue, and Tilly is on communication with them, like, hurry up and beam up, that statue's about to shoot you, I get the security system's coming back online, hurry up, and you have like this sense of excitement and urgency to it. I kind of wish something like that had happened here, instead of Adira just being like, oh, it's going to be really hard to fix that motherboard, but it's actually going to be kind of easy because I'm just going to tell you how to do it.
Right. It didn't amount to too much more than a reboot the system and cross your fingers.
Yeah.
That was something I always think of TOS as being like really good at, is that they would have these like time constraints that were part of the B plot, like, oh, not only are Spock and his father, their relationship is having difficulties, and Sarek has been stabbed, and we're under attack by an alien ship. Like, they were really good at kind of like pushing the pressure up at times. So I kind of that would have been a nice place to put that. Maybe that was kind of one of the things. I'm like, even when there was like the sacrifice thread at the end, it didn't feel very serious to me, and certainly the rest of the stuff didn't feel
or serious, but not like
suspenseful.
Yeah, it's not very exciting to just watch people like cry in a room as the air depletes. It's pretty sad because of the actors' performances. And speaking of the actors' performances, I was talking about our guest star who plays Rava putting on a good job in this episode. When they spill their water bowl in the race, they look so miserable and devastated and just like it was like soul crushing. You can't blame Tilly for being like, oh, I'll go share some of my water with you. I mean, on rewatch, you're like, oh my God, you're killing this kid by doing this. You're going to bring them along with you on your suicide. You're trotting off too. But when you're watching,
if you make it through,
you don't know that.
If you make it through all that, your victory is death. Aaron in the comments points out that air being sucked out of a room was pretty compelling in Galaxy Quest. That's true. They made a big. They made quite the thing of it.
The camera linger on it for a long time, and a bunch of characters that we had spent over an hour getting to know were like, looked pretty miserable, and there was sad music being played, and they had a bigger canvas to paint on. To be fair, but it was much more compelling, leaps and bounds more compelling than the sequence in this episode, in my opinion, at least.
You can get there in an hour, though. I think they could have gotten there.
The room is kind of weird, but I guess it's like part of the technology. I guess you do, if the automation is not working, you do have to go like press a button in here to make it rain. And these people just don't understand. Like, okay, no one has to be in the suffocation room though for it to work. It'll still work without that.
Right.
You'd think they would have tried it at one point, maybe like, hey, will the gods notice if like none of us go in there? Like, can we just like pull the lever and see if it still works? Like, let's just try it.
This is like, Fatheree, that's like Boimler's, can you all just not look when I do this cool future thing? But also, like, you know how you know how like people who have sports superstitions might be like, oh, I was wearing this shirt when my
Yeah.
team won, and so now I always have to wear the shirt. Well, you know, they coughed, they sacrificed somebody the first time, and they're like, we better always do that.
When Mary Wiseman hears the word sacrifice and has her kind of sacrifice like reaction to it,
Yeah.
uh, you know, you see the reaction from, I guess, Burnham also, because Burnham's listening to all of this, and it does get kind of exciting there when it's like, okay, we have like a pressing matter now. You know, we got to get Tilly
Sure.
out. The Tritanium room. I feel like the rules of like when the transporters don't work make more sense in this episode than in Janal. You know, so they take the time to like say to the audience, like, this one room is made out of solid tritanium. If you're inside of that room, we can't beam you. If you're out of the room, we can.
Right. Yeah, no, that's nice. Is that little bit of explanation goes a long way. They had made it from that because of the structure, like otherwise would have collapsed on itself or something like that.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
that what they said?
All the air gets pulled out of that room, so it would crush. It would implode if it wasn't made out of tritanium.
Some kind of cool Denobulan architecture that kept it rolling.
It was interesting to me that Rayner is the one who brings up the Prime Directive. I choose to believe that's him being like, oh, I'm going to be my captain's first officer. It's my duty to point out to the captain in the situation that this is actually a Prime Directive violation. Because it kind of, you know, compared to the guy in the first episode who's willing to put that village in danger to capture Maul and Locke, it kind of seems less likely that he would be so worried about the Prime Directive. But maybe he's trying to think of first officer thinking and not captain thinking.
It's a fair point. Maybe he's like, I don't want her to get sent off to space jail for breaking the Prime Directive, and I have to become the captain of the ship when I'm just starting to figure out how this ship runs. So maybe he was thinking of himself, but I think he was probably trying to do the right thing there. But yeah, it does seem like when he's like pursuing Locke and Maul, he goes into like beast mode, and he will smash anything to get in his way. He's kind of like the cliche of the TV show cop who bends the rules and stuff.
Or it's a bit of a Cisco and Eddington type of relationship, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
You get the whole like Les Mis thing going on that they talk about. Everything I know about Les Mis, I learned from watching Deep Space Nine.
You have to say Les Mis, Fatheree.
See, I don't even know how to say it.
That's all right. It's good though. It's good musical.
I loved how zero hesitation Burnham has when she's like, okay, to save Tilly, I don't care about the Prime Directive. I will just straight up beam in front of this dude. I kind of wish that like they blocked it to make a little bit more sense, where it didn't look like, oh, you could have just like beamed like further away from him and just been like, oh, I just got done running up the steps of the high summit.
Right. So although then the question comes like, do we believe in the Prime Directive or not? Is it something that you do just because Spock or Tilly or whoever is about to die? Are you willing to do that? Clearly, I guess what we learn is that the lesson that the Denobulan scientist wanted to impart was something about the caution with which one interacts with with other cultures. And, thinking about cultural contamination and things like that, he had gone to this kind of great lengths to hide his little sneaky rain machines.
It's interesting to me how different it is from Dr. Phlox, the kind of the only Denobulan we know much about from Enterprise. He was, before the Prime Directive was even a thing, he was very much for it. In the episode Dear Doctor, he didn't want to interfere then, and the original version of that script, he wasn't even going to tell the captain that he had found a cure. He was so anti violating the Prime Directive, or so anti interference. He I guess that's the way to describe him.
He changes during the course of the episode, right? He goes from kind of very non-interference at first to, as I recall, there's another crew member who kind of reframes it for him. And
I guess he softens a little bit, but it's actually Archer who changes his stance. Like at the end, they don't cure those people.
Right. Um, yeah, it's interesting. That's one of those like episodes I'm sure that kind of gets debated a lot, like Tuvix.
Yeah.
But the one thing I definitely know of it is that I found it very compelling viewing.
It's just
Um,
interesting to me how the denobulans of the 24th century, or at least the scientist, I think he might have had some help in establishing this weather system, but it seems to have a very different take on it than Phlox.
Yeah, and of course, that's one of those things we talk about how a lot of the alien races in Trek are kind of monoculture, or at least initially lensed that way. All of them represent sort of a certain idea, but we wouldn't be surprised to find out that among humans that one person was, more empathic than another, so, they might have just had some variety within those denobulans.
After they make like the big reveal and save Rava and Tilly, and I do want to compliment again the actor playing Rava. I think did like I was like sad. I was like, oh no, I don't want to see this 15-year-old or however old the kid's supposed to be. Like I don't want to see this teenager die, But
Yeah.
When they actually like have like that conversation when Burnham sits down and talks to Avaz, I was impressed with the episode here. I didn't think that I thought that it would be more surface level than this. It actually got more sophisticated than I thought, but that could have just been, I don't know, my fear of what I thought the episode was going to be. But I kind of think that the goal of this episode might have been to ask the questions. What room is there in Star Trek for religion, and what room in Star Trek is there for spirituality, or is there room for it? And what I think the episode is trying to tell us is that within these parameters, within like the parameters of science, of what is observable, of what we can learn and know, then within that, you can have healthy, safe religion and spirituality, but it has to stay within those parameters. Was the way that I read it.
I did feel again it was somewhat lucky that this guy was not more hardcore in his tenets, where he was like, heretic, when Burnham did her thing. It did seem like she said that there was was it the dusty lady who was talking about, she was offering some classic wisdom and saying that, oh, you can see God by your acts and by showing goodness to other people. And so they were evolving there, but I don't know that I don't want to absolve them of like making people suffer, not just with the sacrifice itself, which was clearly a somewhat rare thing, I think, but with like their cough runs and things like that. Even being scared of the gods and stuff, like we know that they clearly had, or at least some of them had some fear of the gods, and he talked about being punished by the gods. At times for their infighting and stuff. So I don't know. I felt like it was a little wishy-washy in whether it was going to critique them for it. I know there's that danger of the Enterprise or Discovery or any ship kind of rolling up like, oh, the great white father of Europe has some idea about how you should live your life. But, sacrifice, that's a pretty good bet that you can critique that.
But I feel like it does come in like pretty critical of religion itself, the episode overall. I think it's saying that it kind of parallels the B story with Culber, is when Stamets tells him like I don't really get any of this, but it looks like you're happy and healthy, so I'm just gonna like let you do you. But I feel like like he does say like it's going to be hard for people to give up the sacrifices, and Burnham is pretty firm. She's just like, well they're going to have to. It's like, She kind of seems like the zero tolerance one. You know, she's like
Burnham.
Yeah.
I don't know. She was speaking pretty respectfully. I felt like.
Right, respectful of the religion, but like not of the practices.
Oh yeah. She was pulling a little bit of a Kirk, but maybe a bit more thoughtfully than Kirk would have done it. Of trying to kind of push them forward and allow for change within their orthodoxy. You know what's funny is it occurs to me that that little miniature plot within the plot of Culber about his abuela's what was the dish?
Well, yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. But
the thing I guess I just want to say is where it fits into this is that he expected it was this important deep family tradition of
it was all a
cooking.
lie. It was all
and it was like replicator food. So another science and spirituality little curveball at him there too.
Let's get into that B story. You know, we find the clue. I did like the clue was not in the tower that they went to. It wasn't in like the one functional tower. It was in one of the other 4. I did like that. But they figure out where the clue is. They get the clue, and it rains on the planet, even though no one died in the sacrificial chamber. But yeah, we had the B story of Dr. Culber talking to the holographic ghost of his dead grandmother that was created by scanning his brain, I guess, and getting like his memories. And so then like this AI generated fake version of his grandma, like it comes up with like, oh, by the way, my mofongo was fake the whole time. It's like, how the hell is this computer gonna tell this guy, it's gonna tell this boy like, oh, your grandma didn't really cook all that food that you loved? And he's sitting here smiling, like laughing about, like enjoying it. I'm like, no, that's fucking terrible. I hate everything about that.
Your reaction is more extreme than mine, Fatheree, but I will say, like, especially in the chatbot and AI art era and all of this kind of shit we're having to deal with, it feels kind of weird and gross. There was an episode, by the way, the good Black Mirror episode with, was it Haley Atwell? Anyway, about reviving a loved one in a digital way like this and the pitfalls of it. But I was thinking, in Trek's tradition, they have often had deep and meaningful conversations with Einstein, or who was it, Da Vinci, I think, for Janeway, and we don't freak out and like
the
say
Da Vinci
like,
hologram, even though Da Vinci was really Flint from Requiem for Methuselah.
You take my point though, that we have often treated holograms with and the artificial intelligence behind them as being having the capacity for being just as deep as anyone else, including that lady Riker fell for when
in 1101101101 episode,
and so they do, I think, have that tradition that built up where it's like they've been living with like AI, essentially, probably some good version of it for thousands of years, like 1,000 years or something, and so it maybe have become secondhand. But I will say this, it felt weird to me. It felt weird. I did not like it. Father, when I was watching it a second time, there's a point where he's like saying, wow, it's just like I remember her. It's so amazing. And literally she's on pause while that's happening and flickering. And I was like, bro, do you not see that that's weird and not how she was?
No, that's how his grandma back on Earth would flicker like that on occasion.
Grandma, pause program. And she would have to stop.
All I'm saying is, if I got sent to the 32nd century and I really find myself missing Granny Fatheree, and Zora the computer created a holographic recreation of her, and she told me that like, oh yeah, my bread pudding that you loved growing up was fake. I went and bought that from HEB. I would kill the computer. I would reformat the computer and erase Zora. That would be the end of it.
What I think that I would take from that is that it was maybe something he did know all along, that he kind of had sort of, like a kid in Santa Claus. You suspect, you kind of, you want to believe, but, and so he, something about when he was giving the parameters that outed it to the computer, which saw something he had kind of denied himself. That's the way I'm thinking about it.
I am kind of overreacting, but I do think it is weird Black Mirror creepy territory that I don't want Star Trek to go into. We've kind of explored similar territory before, people creating holographic versions of real people on the holodeck, and I don't know, I don't feel like this is something that necessarily needs to be like tackled or addressed in the 32nd century. I feel like it should have been covered by the time Disco gets there. I did like seeing a Star Trek scene in Spanish, though. That was kind of fun.
Yes, that was. I really liked that, and not just briefly, but like an extended sequence. Yeah. I have in my notes that was like one of the things I really liked about the moment. I like their interaction. Like suddenly I'm blanking on Culber's actor.
Wilson Cruz.
Wilson Cruz. He's been doing lots of good stuff this season, but I like the passion he brings to it, and getting to kind of that sort of lively conversation like you have, where he like almost became a little bit more of his youthful self, and like was charmed by her once again. But yeah, Father, I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, could they have the technology to do it pretty well? Yeah, probably so. But I also would think that whether you're talking the 23rd century or the 32nd century, that they would also have kind of gotten more accepting and understanding of death. And so losing someone would be sad, but you would also hopefully they would be a little bit better equipped to deal with it than we are sometimes now.
That was the Gene Roddenberry thing. He said, like, oh yeah, in the future, like a kid wouldn't cry if his mom died on a away mission. He'd
okay, well that might be a little much. That's the flip side to it. Is I think that's almost at that point it's hard for us to relate to the characters.
That was also after decades of cocaine, alcoholism, and maybe like the mini strokes might have started by that point. So
I'll say this just to briefly hang on that point is, I think what would happen is you would cry, but there wouldn't, like any remaining stigma to that had mostly have dropped, and so you would be like, it's okay to feel these emotions. Yeah. That's.
I cry pretty frequently. I cry all the time, and I feel like no one ever gives me shit about it.
Yeah, but there you go.
I liked the book scenes with Culber though. They get like one scene where he's like, oh, I'll come hang out with you later. Go distract yourself. Go play some video games or something. Then I'll see you again at the end of the episode. But we have some Culber and Stamets scenes. I did like that they actually like get to kiss on screen. That hasn't happened much. But like their conversation, like I don't know. I think you probably relate to this in a similar way that I do, Dave, is just like, when you're a very like skeptical person, but like you ever try to like date anyone with any type of spiritual beliefs or anything, you kind of get conversations like this. I think it was designed to be kind of like that, kind of like relatable.
Right. In this scenario, I am the Stamets. And I'm like, I'm not going to step on your beliefs, but I'm going to probably talk a little bit awkwardly around it, because it's definitely not how I feel. And so, yeah, I'm going to, like, arguably Stamets, while he maybe didn't read the room so well, like, see the kind of comfort that Culber needed in the moment, and that he wasn't quite pulling it off, he was still trying to say, hey, the important thing is, of course, from the thing that we can agree upon is you're doing okay, you're healthy, and he's maybe a little over reliant on it, because he's kind of is thinking, well, the computer said you're healthy, so it's okay. But there's a little, I suppose, over reliance on science, because he's not okay. He needs something more, and Stamets is actually not able to deliver it.
But I find that relatable too. I think I would have to tell my partner in the situation like that, like, yeah, I don't know how to be supportive in this area.
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting that that should be okay. Like, everyone, in a relationship, you kind of learn to bend a little bit, but you shouldn't be required to betray your beliefs as long as you're not being an asshole about them. And so I don't think Stamets did anything wrong, other than maybe slightly misreading his husband, and maybe it's almost the kind of thing I think after the fact that he needs to be like, hey, I really want to help you. Maybe even acknowledging I can't. I'm not the guy who can really help you on this one. It's not my skill set. I can be there for you. I love you and all of that, but I can't kind of share your spiritual journey because it's so different from the path I'm on. And and maybe help him then, maybe who can we find who can help you? That's maybe the only thing that I think that might have been the next level part of that conversation.
It does raise some interesting questions because as someone who is pretty skeptical, and I don't have a spirituality in my life. It's not a thing. And I find it a pretty fulfilling experience living like that. But it does create, I guess, tension sometimes when people like with faith or with spirituality, or when they make decisions that might influence other people. Like, for example, like I think it was actually Bill Maher who I find myself increasingly less likely to agree with as he becomes more and more of an asshole these days. But
Totally.
at one point he did say something that was, I thought, a pretty good criticism of like the Bush administration years ago, was that maybe if I think it was Maher who said this, but he said maybe if we had a president who didn't think like when soldiers died they went to heaven, maybe he'd be less likely to start wars. And it's like, yeah, so like sometimes I do think one individual's spiritual beliefs can have really negative repercussions, and so when people are making choices because they think the spirit of my dead parent wants me to do this or something like that, I really want to stress people to reconsider if it's not going to impact me or anyone else. And I don't know, I think people, I think that I guess it's kind of, I think what the heart of what this episode is trying to get at is what areas is there room within kind of like the Star Trek ethos for the spiritual beliefs and for religious beliefs. And I think the statement of the episode again is that like within those parameters of as long as it will comply with what outside of your beliefs, what we've agreed is correct and moral and also like scientifically correct and observably correct, if you're willing to comply with that larger reality, then you're fine to have your individual beliefs. But I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of, and sometimes I miss the Kirk speech or the Picard speech where they would arguably somewhat paternalistically just project like a strong belief. And I think part of it is because that's very dramatic. It's big drama. That's makes for kind of compelling viewing. But it is also, kind of comes with this paternalistic sort of mansplainy kind of vibe too. So I respect for Disco for finding its new ways to talk about these. It occurs to me that Tilly, when she was talking about Stamets, she was the one who clued him in that he was on having spiritual questioning in the first place.
Yeah.
She's a big science nerd. She didn't say like, she didn't come down on him for that, or didn't.
Yeah, I
offer
think
up any
she
judgment.
she just helped him find the words he was looking for when it was like, oh, it sounded like you're feeling like a connection to like a higher power, something like. I want to use like the word like woo woo, which might be like that's judgmental but
Hey,
like
Jet Reno can say it.
Yeah, but like you're feeling a connection to something like higher power type vibes or something like that. Like she used the word spiritual, but I think she's just trying to help him kind of admit to himself maybe. But I don't know. We might learn that there's more to this. Like maybe he has something like in his brain from being possessed by the Trill, and maybe like there is something like more to it that will be revealed at the end. It makes me nervous because I really don't have any idea where they're going with it, and I'm scared it might be something too weird that I don't like.
Yeah, the big reveals about the progenitors and about him could backfire, as we have often discussed. Discovery has a tradition of that. So. As we get nearer to the end, there is a little bit of reason for the old Discovery caution. I'm liking the I guess the meat and potatoes of the search and the quest, and I love Locke and Maul, and Rayner's journey. There's lots of stuff I'm really feeling this season, but they could stumble in that big question that
It's kind of exciting though, isn't it? Like we're going to be nervous until like the very end. That's kind of exciting.
Yes.
It wouldn't be Disco if we didn't have that.
God, I suppose that's true. I felt like a weird little bit of calm after this episode because I felt like I had hit what for me was the speed bump of the season, and I was like, I didn't really like that much at all. And then I watched it again and I liked it a bit more, but I was also like, you know what? Even that first reaction, it was like, it's still relatively harmless. Like I said, no major screw ups. They didn't betray anybody's character, and I can just say that was a leg of the search that I just didn't care for. So,
what do you think of Book playing asteroids?
I thought it seemed a little dumb.
I can't explain why, but I loved that. I just liked the way it looked. I just thought it looked cool, and it makes me sad every time I watch this episode that I can't like play like that. I want to play like the red asteroid games on the black background. It looks like Virtual Boy. I'm just now remembering, but Virtual Boy in the 90s, all the games looked like this. The Virtual Boy had two colors. It had black and red.
Yeah, it was like red vector graphics.
Yeah.
Fatheree, it takes me back to the game that was playing in Star Trek 3, that biplane fighting game
in the bar.
Yeah, this is like, which itself was probably, that was probably like the way Minecraft is like all very deliberately retro now. That was probably some retro throwback.
Yeah, it had to be.
I don't know.
What about the conversation over the replicated Mofungo with Culber and
so first of all, it made me want to try Mofungo, and I looked up and I watched a video of somebody making it, and it was pretty cool to see. And I don't know if I like it, but I want to try it for sure. So it's on my list.
I ate that in Florida with our friends Starfleet Sohel and Ruben the Martian.
How very cool! It was like a prelude to this without you knowing it.
But we have some Puerto Rican restaurants in Austin. I don't know which ones are the good ones, but maybe we can find out and get you some Mofungo.
Yeah, that seems like a plan. But to get to stay on the topic, I liked this because I felt like, although Book doesn't exactly talk a lot about higher powers and things like that, he does talk about a lot of woo-woo stuff. And he's an empath, and his people have this kind of connection to nature, which is like spiritual in its execution. And if I have any spirituality to myself, that's where mine is. And so Book, I felt like Book was made sense. He's the voice who kind of he's pragmatic, but he does come from a people with this tradition of kind of spiritual connection and empathy, high empathy. So yeah, he seemed like the guy. I've come to really like Book. I feel like I was almost like neutral on him for like a season or two, and then I came around more.
Yeah, I realize now how much like I really love the character of Book, but I thought that you would really be taken with him for whatever reason. I guess because like he's an animal guy and he's an empath. But when he was like the exciting new character, we're like, oh, this David Ajala guy. He played Manchester Black on Supergirl. What the hell is he going to be like in Star Trek? And I guess I was the one really taken with him. But I was like, oh, Dave's going to love this. I didn't realize like, oh no, Fatheree love this character. I don't know why I had to assign him to be like, oh, this is Dave's character. But no, he's my favorite character in the show. I liked the scene so much because it gave me the confirmation I needed that Book still loves Michael. I think last week we got the confirmation that Michael still loves Book. And then here, when they pretty much almost literally say it out loud, but Culber does ask him. He's like, "Oh, like you missed that? You think you're gonna get like that relationship back?" And Book just being like, "One answer at a time, Doc." I loved that response, it makes me excited.
His accent is so good. One answer at a time, Doc. That was a terrible version of it, but his delivery on it was that very subdued and very real kind of thing. Like, yeah, they're friendly, but he kind of there's that hint there of like, I'm not gonna like really engage too much with that conversation now. I just thought like David Ajala can modulate tone and stuff so impressively that he can say a little and yet say a lot. So I really like that.
Yeah. No, great performance, great moment, good acting from both. And it was, I don't know, it's fun. Just Culber book. I like these characters. I like seeing them have a fun Puerto Rican dinner together in the shuttlecraft. And that's really truly like I think why we do become so fanatical about Star Trek is the connections we build like with these characters. Just talking Star Trek, doing this show like over the years, I'm realizing more and more that like the secret sauce of Star Trek, it really is the connections the fans make to the characters. How much we love these people.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about it, it's almost like when you just say their names, like Data, Kirk, Picard, Riker, Janeway.
We all know them. We all think of like the same things when we think about those people.
Mm-hmm. Although the interesting thing is, of course, there are people connect on different levels.
Sure,
whether it's like finding the early non-platonic connection between Kirk and Spock and those early fan fiction writers, or neurodivergent people connecting with Data. It's really cool how we can find ourselves, and a testament to the writers and the actors that they built these characters that have these kind of multi-levels to them and depths that have kept them, so compelling over the many decades. I was watching Jesse Gender talking about this episode, trying to sort of. I was curious to hear some other thoughts on it early on. I'll listen to Trek Ups and Downs and stuff like that too sometimes. And so she's talking about it, and she mentioned that Tilly said to Burnham, like, hey, we could use you at the Academy. And Burnham's like, kind of just flippantly, I'll keep that in mind. Or I forget what she said. But Jesse Gender loves this cast and was like, I would like for them to just kind of migrate over there, that Stamets goes to become a professor there and Hugh comes with him and all that. And, I don't know if I necessarily want it as like everybody moves over as Jesse did. But when she was talking about it, that enthusiasm for the characters came through in just the way we were talking about. And I was like, part of me kind of does want that, or at least some version of that.
I would totally love to see anyone on Discovery reappear at some point in the Academy show. I think it will be a different cast because just TV production, and if you wanted to cast Sonequa Martin Green as a lead on that show, also you'd have to back up the money truck tour. So I think she'll probably go somewhere else, but maybe like a guest appearance. But who the hell knows with any of this? I mean, like 20 years from now, we could have like a hologram Michael Burnham appear on a show, like how Janeway appeared on Prodigy.
Yeah.
It's I think all these people, I keep saying how, remember like last year how we got to see like Riker and Ro Lauren and so many people from like Legacy Star Trek return. It's like
and Ro
no one ever really goes away.
I struggled with it a little bit at first, but I will go back and I will rewatch Ro's final scene or clips from her final episode because it's so good. It's so well done. And
we had like Tuvok and Seven of Nine hanging out again, like since Voyager.
Yeah.
We got to see them like on screen again, for the first time in decades. It's like, I think that there's a good chance that we'll see a lot of these Discovery people again in the future. Just we might have to be patient, but I think it'll happen eventually.
We also got Evil Tuvok.
Yeah, we got that.
But I think that things are changing a little bit too, and we might not necessarily have to wait, that long for it. Like we should be prepared for it.
It helps that we live in an era where Star Trek is back in production, that there's new Star Trek constantly. There's always something being made.
Mm-hmm.
So, it does help.
Yeah, here's hoping that all the various potential sales still allow for that.
Yeah, I think and as long as Paramount Plus is going to be around, I think they're going to be adding Star Trek shows and Taylor Sheridan shows, because those seem to be the only one. I don't know if any will get more than 5 seasons. Has Paramount Plus ever given a 6th season to anything?
That's an
Someone
interesting question.
look into that. But it might be the case that like they stop at 5. But I feel like the streaming platform mentality now it does change, but it seems to be like they want to add more tiles to the menu. They want to have more shows on there, not necessarily like more seasons of the shows. So I think that's a big part of why Discovery was canceled, to make room for the Academy show. But I guess let's talk about like the ending of this episode. We have the fourth of the 5 puzzle pieces, so only one more. We're gonna have to go to Beta Z, which I like. Dave, you and I were both kind of disappointed in episode 2 when they're like, "Oh, the clue says go to Beta Z." No, just kidding. It says go to Trill. Because we were both like, well, we've already been to 32nd Century Trill. We want to see 32nd Century Beta Z. So, but it sounds like, hey, best case scenario, we get a revisit to Trill, and then later in the season, we get to go to Beta Z. So I'm hoping that that's what happens, and we actually see 32nd Century Beta Z.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, if they whisk out the rug under me again on that one, I will be cranky about that. Because I want to see all of the budget and thoughtfulness of production design that goes into Discovery turned toward Beta Z. I think that'd be super cool.
And I have a Beta Z, Betazoid Gornegg in the Gornegg section of the show that I'll get to right now, unless Dave has any final thoughts on Whistlespeak.
I don't think I do.
Okay. Well, in that case, goodbye, Dust Forest Planet. Let's talk about some Gorneggs. These are our Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections in the episode we thought would be fun to mention. But just starting off with our opening title sequence at the beginning, they added the third puzzle piece being added to the design from the Romulan diary, and they actually have like the vial of water removable from like that piece is visualized in the opening credits. So check that out if you hit the skip intro. Denobulans, of course, from Star Trek Enterprise. There is a fun visual connection on the control panel that Burnham has to repair. It actually matched the visual written language we saw on the computer consoles in the Enterprise episode Cold Storage or Cold Station 12 or I don't know, something like that. It's in season 4. You haven't gotten to it yet, Dave, but we'll get to it eventually.
That's cool, though.
Well, yeah, this image is from trekcore.com if you're watching on YouTube. And then in the list of names that Kovich provides, the name of the Betazoid was Marina Derricks, clearly named after Counselor Troy actor Marina Sirtis. But that's all I got on the Gorneggs this week. But y'all just heard Dave and I talk about Whistlespeak for an hour and a half, so you know everything about how we feel about this episode. Y'all need to let us know how you feel about it. So please comment on YouTube or sound off in the Tex-Trek Discord server or reply to my tweets on Twitter or other places on social media. We do like to ask other people's opinions and share them on the show. Dave, we received some subspace transmissions last week on the episode Mirrors. So what did people think about Mirrors?
Yeah. Let's hit a few Discord ones first. Art Trek 007 says, I like the episode as a whole, but didn't like so much content on the villains. Maybe I'm being tough on them, but they are... but to me, they are selfish murderers, and therefore all I'm concerned with is their capture or end. Now, I was trying to think, what murders do we know they've committed, Fatheree?
Goblin Man in...
right?
In Face the Strange.
Yep. By the way, that's the kind of person that, like, Worf or... who was he partnered with in Picard?
That guy sold
Raffi.
Weapons to the Emerald Chain to use on civilians.
Yeah. So there was also was it Fred?
Fred the android.
Yep. If indeed he's dead. And they did put a bunch of people at risk, but do we actually know anything beyond that?
And Locke shot those guards that his uncle was like, "Hey, hold this blonde girl for my nephew to shoot." And then Locke
I don't know.
shot the guy as holding her instead of her.
Right. Yeah, I think that's that is also in the forgivable category. Okay.
I
Anyway,
mean, maybe they were good dudes who got demoted down to shuttle service. Also, I mean, we don't know.
those were the loyal royal guards of
I'm
that
kidding you.
dude. Yeah, I'm sure
They
were.
were straight up gonna hold her there and let them shoot.
That's true. That's true.
They were.
So let's see. Let's see. Our Joanne Robertson from our audience says, "I appreciate any episode where Michael and Book get to interact. Their chemistry is so strong, and their relationship is so important when it comes to representation." Parentheses I echoes that and says, "Book just seems like the perfect boyfriend. He's kind, smart, patient, competent, good-looking. His only flaw is that he loves too much."
Joanne,
yeah.
just a important comment to add to that, but a lot of credit needs to go to Sonequa Martin Green as a producer on Star Trek Discovery. It was important to her to show that relationship well. So kudos to her.
Yeah. Good thought there, Fatheree. In addition to, of course, her acting. And let's see. J3285 says, "One thing I love about modern entertainment is that characters can be really amazing and mature, but not without weaknesses." So, yeah, for sure. That is one of the hallmarks, I think, of, your prestige TV era. And let's close it out with a comment from Blue Sky here. This is from Ross Webster. A fun but fairly simple concept for an episode, enhanced by interesting backstory, great Locke reveal, and brilliant crew interaction. Breen were cool, but lost a touch of their alien edge. Mirror Universe callback was fun, but didn't do too much. I think those are reasonable critiques that's that Boba Fett thing, It's you explaining anything about the spooky mystery man can almost necessarily takes away a little bit. But I think this is a reveal I've been happy with.
Same. I do kind of mourn the loss of the Breen mystery, but what they've given us in the meantime has been good. Dare I say, great. Was Mirrors great in my opinion? I think maybe. I don't know. I certainly loved it. I had fun. I had a great time. That's the words I'm looking for. I had a great time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. This episode, it's interesting because I think when you talk about like a sort of a treasure hunt season, well, that's kind of what you're looking for, is having a great time. And I remember, seeing Sonequa Martin Green early on being interviewed and saying, "Yes, this is a big action season. You're going to be blown away." And I was like, "Oh no, it's just going to be all action set pieces and not character stuff."
It's just going to be her. It's going to be her like riding on top of starships at warp for 10 episodes.
Yes, my worst fear. But yes, then it turns out I really enjoyed a lot of the action stuff in it, and so yes, I've been enjoying it a lot. Whether the sort of philosophical questions will pan out, whether the progenitor story will work out, that remains to be seen. It's where they could still drop the ball. But I can say I've really liked the ride, somewhat this episode accepted.
Yeah, this was my least favorite episode of the season, but there were still things in here that I had a good time with. And like you, Dave, I don't really think it's going to have too big of a negative impact on my enjoyment of the overall arc. And I'm very, very, very excited to watch the next episode. These are precious. We only have 4 left, but next week, season 5, episode 7 is called Eriga. So the Breen
they better be
blood
in it.
bounty.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to do Maul and Locke. My hope is that we get as much with them as we had in Mirrors. That's kind of my expectation going into it. So we'll see if the show delivers. But like always, Michelle Paradise gave us a tease for this one, as she gave us a tease for every episode this season. For episode 7, Eriga, Michelle Paradise, the showrunner of Discovery, says, "Tense and unexpected." So I obviously don't know what to expect.
Yeah, tense and unexpected. That sounds interesting. I feel like there's going to be more standoffs with weapons, but who knows?
It might be some of that. What did you how did you describe it last week? But the John Woo style of delivering melodrama and high intensity action at the same time.
Yeah. It seems to be for sure. Their story in particular has taken lots of cues from that.
Yeah, well, perhaps. But yeah, hopefully cool Maw and Locke stuff. Hopefully cool Beta Z stuff. Who knows what else to expect? But definitely some Breen stuff in Eriga. We'll talk about it next week. You can also check out Rachel on the First Reaction stream on Thursday nights. Those have been a lot of fun. And just a reminder, anyone in the Tex-Trek Patreon, you're welcome to attend those Thursday night streams.
Oh, yeah.
Just a message.
I know Rachel's got lots of good guests and stuff going on in there, and yeah, but it'd be cool to have all the more voices.
Yeah, just message Rachel at DramaDork884 on Twitter. And Dave and I will be live Friday, 7 p.m. and available on podcast platforms. But until next week, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.